Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this second lecture by Dr. Nagaswamy in our Indian Knowledge Systems course at IIT Gandhinagar. It's a great honor to have Dr. Nagaswamy, who at his very respectable age of 91 is continuing to work in his fields of scholarship. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this second lecture by Dr. Nagaswamy in our Indian Knowledge Systems course at IIT Gandhinagar. It's a great honor to have Dr. Nagaswamy. Excuse me, there was a technical glitch. So Dr. Nagaswamy has been, since the 1950s, active in fields of archaeology, epigraphy, numismatics, texts of Sanskrit literature, Tamil literature, art history. He's a famous art historian, especially he's done a lot of important work on the Chola Art and Chola bronzes in particular. So having him is a great pleasure, and personally for me, because I've been in contact with him for more than 20 years. Yesterday, Dr. Nagaswamy gave us a bird's eye view of the earliest Tamil literature, also known as Sangam literature, and its deep connections with Sanskrit motifs, Sanskrit methods, Sanskrit concepts, and devices. So today he is going to take more particularly the topic of the Tolkappiyam, which is one of the earliest Tamil texts, often described as Tamil grammar, but as he will explain to us, it is more than that. So Dr. Nagaswamy, with great pleasure, I invite you to take over, and we are listening to you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, all of you. I'm going to test your patience today. Yesterday we had a very light lecture, but today I would have to give a little more stronger presentation. But it will be mainly connected with Nāṭyaśāstra and Tamil grammar. From literature we move on to Tamil grammar and also Sanskrit. Well, this is this introduction. I want to speak about Tolkappiyam and Nāṭyaśāstra. Tolkappiyam is Tamil grammar, ancient most Tamil grammar. But let us see this. The sentence is only a statement of fact. But kavya is suggestive communication with a joy. A few points about aesthetics of poetry is required to follow what I am going to speak about today. Kavya, that which is beautiful and gives pleasant joy, is called kavyam. Kavaniyam, kavyam, that which attracts. The statement of fact is a sentence, but suggestive, embellished communication is poetry. That's kavya. Kavya is divided into two as drishya kavya, that is visual poetry, which is dance, and shravya kavya, which is music, Gita. Dance is purely a suggestive art. So are sculptures, paintings, and so on. But music is also an evocative art. Both are based on rhythm. Tala. Natyam tala layasritam. Natya is based on tala. Similarly, poetry is also based on rhythm. Poetry in ancient times was recited and heard until script came into existence. Tolkappiyam is the most ancient surviving Tamil grammar written by one Tolkappiyar who belonged to the family of Kapi Gotra. Kapya as a Gotra, ancient Gotra. He is said to have been a disciple of Agastya, sage Agastya. The way he composed this grammar is very well documented in ancient literature. He studied the classical and spoken language. Classical, that is Sanskrita, and spoken language is Prakrita. So he studied classical and spoken language prevalent in Tamil-speaking area at that time. And also, he studied all the relevant early texts in detail. So he studied the earlier texts already available. He reflected duly on all aspects dealt with in them. And he classified the topics clearly. It is his methodology which is mentioned in ancient literature. He met one great teacher, Adankot Asan, who was a Chaturvedin and the chief judge under the ruling king Pandya. And after consultation, he wrote this text named after himself as Tolkappiyam, drawing from a Vedic grammatical text called Aindiram. Tolkappiyam is divided into three major parts. Adhikarams, three adhikarams. One is called Elithu, means letter, Akshara. This is one division. The second one is Pada, that is soul in Tamil, words in English. So Elithu and soul. And the third is meaning, Porul, that is Artha. So we have Akshara, Pada, and Artha in Sanskrit, which is rendered into Tamil as Edith, soul, and meaning. The text is in sutra form, as prevalent at that time. As he mentions phonetics and written script, this text is post-Ashokan in date. As all the Sangam Tamil poems follow his grammatical structure, he is at the head of Sangam work about 1st century BCE to 1st century CE. There are very clear indications that the script he is describing is Brahmi. I am going to deal with some aspects of the poetic compositions in the meaning part, not in the Elithu part, not in the Swal part. There is Akshara and Pada. I leave them out. I take the meaning and under the meaning section, Porul Adhikaram, there are many subheadings under each. So the first one is Aham division, Ahathinai, Sringara. This is further subdivided into secret love called Kalavu, chaste wedded love, Karpu, Kalpitam. So this is Aham tradition, is the first chapter. first division. The second is Puram, external exploits, as we have seen yesterday. Then we have one section, one part called Mei Padu. Mei is body, Pad is effect. Padu is effect. So Mei Padu is the bodily effect of looking at or listening to these compositions. Mei Padu is actually rasa, that is aesthetics of appreciation. Then we have Shayyur, poetics. Then we have similes and other things like Upama, Deepakam, and so on. So this is mainly divided into Aham, Puram, Maipadu, and poetics, Alankara, and so on. Look at that. Among the Adhigaram, the first one is Aham, that is Sringara. Natya is an art of suggestion, suggestive communication with appropriate music, rhythm, and evocative movements and gestures in a pleasant environment that sends a thrilling joy in the spectator. It is Natya, including Nataka, has two modes. One is called worldly mode of expression. Now, I don't use the word expression. It must be called suggestion. Worldly mode of suggestion, called Lokadharmi in Sanskrit. Lokadharmi. The other mode is Natyadharmi. That's the dance mode. So we have two modes, Lokadharmi and Natyadharmi. Let us say we take a Philistine function on a stage. You can show it with purely by someone walking across and giving all the gadgets, garlands, and awards, etc. by walking. And this is what is just purely what we do in our worldly life. So this is called Lokadharmi. But you can also present it without anybody on the stage. A dancing girl can enter with rhythmic steps, beautiful movement of her limbs, come there in the center where there will be nothing, but she can still create an imagery as if somebody is sitting down there and she is presenting it with some gestures, etc. And these gestures are all defined earlier. It looks like a suggestive form of felicitation only, felicitation function. That is called Natyadharmi. So just walking is Lokadharmi with steps and rhythm and music, which is called Natyadharmi. These gestures are defined by experience and suggested scientifically is Nāṭyaśāstra. Combination of all this is Nāṭyaśāstra. Any poetic composition with these as main motives is oriented towards Natya. First, Chola takes up the composition of the poetry under different sections. First, he takes the space where the love theme is enacted. That's called Nilam, ground, space, environment, where the event takes place, the landscape. The landscape, the author divides into, land is divided into 4 or 5 divisions. One is hilly tract. The event takes place in a hilly tract. Or a forest. We may call it uplands. 3. Cultivated settled villages. 4. Township. That's a cultivated settled village. Coastal region. 4th. And desert region. 5. So we have hill, we have forest region, we have cultivated villages, we have coastal region, and desert region, the land where the event takes place. So this is the actual natural space where the event takes place. So what happened? The second, first we saw that Sringara Rasa as the first by dealing with Aham group of poem. And the second, the time, the love event is more pleasurable in the evening times, under the full moon, and so on. So the time, space is the first, time is the second. These two are natural elements, and where the love event takes place, and they form the background, the first background. So they are called Mudal, first. So we may take this as the environmental nature where the event takes place. So the second one is customs of the people who occupy these lands. In the hillside, in the forest side, in the township side, in what we call a coastal area, the people who inhabit those places where this takes place. And the second, the gods they worship, the food habits, birds, animals, their preferred music and drums, amongst which whom the love event is described. In other words, the human environment is called Karur, Garbha. So the first is time and space. The second is human environment in which the event takes place. This is the second part. The third part is the type of emotion that results from this event. An emotion of joy, the pangs of separation, or anxious waiting, or love quarrel, or shocking separation, etc. This is called Uri. Uri, that which you get out of these two, the first and the second. The first, land and space. The second is the people, and where the event is described. And third, the final is the realization of the joy out of this depiction is called Uri. So these are the three classifications under which Tulgapya described the Aham poem. Three basic divisions as nature, human environment, in which the poem of emotion is suggested. There's one more point in which Tulgapya sets his Aham theme. The author, Tulgapya, associates one type of emotion to one environment. For example, in hilly region, he associates union, joy in union, which is something like what we call Sambhoga Singara, hilly region. Upland, waiting for the lover to return. the girl is waiting for has gone to America for earning or higher studies, and she is ready to wait for her return, for his return. And that's the second one, waiting for the lover. Third, settled land, that is in the township or villages. Love quarrel. You are aware of love quarrels. And that is woodal. It is called woodal in Tamil. The fourth one, the coastal region, whaling. And the fifth one is separation. So, whenever there is a mention of hilly region, that suggests that the poem is containing a joy in union, Sringara. If an upland, a grazing ground, it's called grazing ground, where shepherds are there in forest region, that suggests that the emotion that is going to be described or realized is waiting for the lover to return. Similarly, in a settled place like a township, it is the love quarrel that is depicted. That is the emotion, woodal. Coastal region, suffering, wailing, and desert region, complete separation. So these are all just conventional places that are mentioned. And when they mention the place, they mention the people, they mention the bird, they mention the tune, they mention the food habit and so on. These are conventions to suggest emotions in poetry. Having described all these in detail, Tolyapya says in the final sutra of Aham, that is the Sringara part, these poetic suggestions are meant what he has described for. He gives these two words. Tolyapya mentioned these two words, Nādaga Vazhakku and Ulagiyal Vazhakku. Nādaga Vazhakku is exact Tamil translation of Nāṭya-dharmi. Ulagiyal Vazhakku is worldly dharma, that is Loka-dharmi. So when Tolyapya speaks of in the very first section of Nādaga Vazhakku and Ulagiyal Vazhakku, that is Nāṭya-dharmi and Loka-dharmi, it is very clear he is addressing the thing connected with Natya, art of Natya. These are very, very clear indications that Tolyapya is dealing with dance. These divisions of different landscapes are not the creation of Tolyapya. They are already defined in Nāṭyaśāstra in a chapter called Kaksha Vibhaga, in which the stage is suggestively divided. The animals, birds, etc. are also suggested by gestures to show the region. In ancient times, these were all practiced. Even now in Kerala, some people can show this, they show this. When they first appear on the stage, they artificially divided into 4 parts. One part, he will go and show as if it is a hill trees, hill animals like elephant and so on, all suggestion in one quarter. The second quarter, he will show forest and all forest animals, forest food, forest birds, and so on. The third one will come on to the next slide. Third one is cultivated land. He will show what happens in the cultivated land so that he suggests that is the cultivated land. And the fourth one is the coastal area, and the fifth one where they overlap on the boundaries. Now, all these are done only in pure suggestion. So, what we see is when he wants to enact an event happening in hill, he will go to that quarter and enact it. And if you want to enact one in the settled land, town, and so on, he will go to the third quarter where he has already suggested and everything will take place there. So it is an artificial division of the state in which all these events are shown by pure suggestive mode of movement and gesture. That is mentioned in Nāṭyaśāstra as Kaksha Vibhaga. This is a separate chapter, long chapter. The animals, birds are all suggested to show the reason. Also, the Nāṭyaśāstra shows the impact of time on the event. It mentions. Thirukkural speaks about the land and space and time. Nāṭyaśāstra speaks about the same thing earlier, about the space and time. So clearly, Thirukkural follows Nāṭyaśāstra. I have spoken about Aham theme. Aham themes are Sringara. What about Puram? Puram deals with exploits, victory, capture of fort, capture of cows, and performance of Vedic sacrifices, and so on. All these are all described in Dharma, Artha, and Moksha are described in Puram. What about the Maraldo? Were they also meant for dawn? Yes, undoubtedly. Under Puram classification, Thirukkural himself mentions all categories of Puram poems were meant for 21 forms of Kutus. Kutu means dawn in Tamil. So he gives the names of all the 21 forms of Kutu. In Tamil tradition, we have two types of dances mentioned. One is called Ahakutu and the other one is called Purakutu. Two divisions. Ahakutu is Sringara, Purakutu is the Kutu of the royal court, Vinoda, and so on. So the division of poetry, the division of dance into Aham and Puram, they are clearly to indicate what you call Sringara Bhava on the one side and other or the worldly Bhava on the other side. So all these are shown by the roving singers called Banas and also called Viralis. The consorts of the Banas, the singers, are called Viralis. They are dancers. And almost every poem in Sangam literature, you will see the presence of Bana and Virali going from village to village, the king to king, and describing their fame, etc. And the kings presenting them with gold chains and so on. You find in almost every Sangam poem. That indicates that these are all meant to be sung and danced in the presence of the king and chieftains and others. Then we have another important chapter. We saw Aham, we saw Puram. These are all meant for dance. And we have one chapter called May Padu. May means body, Padu is the reaction. As you sit down and watch all these things, the response you have in your own mind, heart of hearts, the thrilling experience. That is what we call in Sanskrit tradition as rasa, rasaswadana. So the chapter on Meipadu in Tolgapiyam is very important for our study. In brief, Meipadu means realization of rasa. Now here, Nāṭyaśāstra or Bharata described 8 rasas. Ashtau natye rasa smritaha. Natye rasaha ashtau smritaha. 8. What are they? Sringara, Hasya, Karuna, Raudra, Veera, Bhayanaka, Bibhatsa, and Adbhuta. These are the 8 rasas which are called Natya rasas in Bharata's Nāṭyaśāstra. And Tolkapiyam, under Meipadu, gives exactly 8 rasas. And exact Tamil rendering of these words, Sanskrit words, Sringara, as inbam, standing for erotic delight. Hasya is Nahai, Nahai itself, laughter. Karuna, it is called Aluhai, compassion. Raudra, Vehuli, fury. And Veera, Perimidam, heroism. Bhayanaka, Acham, fear. Bibhatsa, deliverance, disgust. And Adbhuta is Manbu. So we have 8 rasas described in Bharata's Nāṭyaśāstra. The same 8 rasas are described in Tolkapiyam. Bharata does not mention or include Shanta as a rasa. He doesn't accept Shanta as a Natya rasa because Natya is essentially movement of bodily limbs and bhavas. In Shanta, nothing is possible when you have just stand like a post. So, Shanta similarly, Tolkapiyam also does not include Shanta as a rasa. It shows clearly that the rasa theory, which was developed by Nāṭyaśāstra, in Nāṭyaśāstra, was taken by Tolkapiyam in his grammatical work. Right. But later on we have Shantopi Navamo Rasaha. Later on, due to passage of time, Shanta has been included as the 9th rasa. But even then, they can be included in the poetic or musical region, but not in dance. So, then, very important, we saw Meipadu, exactly the same as in Bharata's Nāṭyaśāstra, in Tolkapiyam. Tolkapiyam also divides, Nāṭyaśāstra divides rasa theory, rasa aswadana, into 4 parts: Vibhava, Anubhava, Sattvika bhava, and Vyabhichari bhava. That is, each rasa realization is obtained through these 4 groups. Vibhavaihi, Anubhavaihi, Satvikaihi, Vyabhicharihi, Aniyamana Svaditam. They bring in the realization of the aesthetic joy. Vibhava, Anubhava, Sattvika bhava, and Vyabhichari bhava. Tolkapiyam also divides them into 4, these rasas. So, I have given all these, for there is no need to go through all these lists, but exactly the same. The Nāṭyaśāstra deals with 4 vrittis. These vrittis are the modes of experience. One is called Arabhati, second is called Bharati, third is called Satvati, and the fourth is called Kaisiki. Now these 4 are discussed in detail at the very beginning in Nāṭyaśāstra. Arabhati, Bharati, Satvati, and Kaisiki. Now I am going to talk to you about Silapadikaram now for a few minutes. Number 1. The famous commentator on Silapadikaram named Adiyark Nallar in 13th century states that Silapadikaram is a Nataka Kapyam. It is a dramatic composition, a composition meant to be enacted on the stage, like Sakuntalam or Kiratarjuniyam in Sanskrit. So, Silapadikaram is a Nadaka Kavyam. What a wonderful kavya it is. Marvelous. Wonderful in Tamil. And this was composed by no less a person than the younger prince of the Chera ruler, Ilango Adigar. Adiyark Nallar in Tamil says there were 2 important works earlier than the Silapadikaram, and he gives the names as Agasthyam and Bharatam. Both of them were in Tamil. Obviously, before the composition of Silapadikaram in Tamil, there were 2 Tamil compositions, grammatical work called Agasthyam and Bharatam. And both of them disappeared before the composition of Tolkapiyar. So, Silapadikaram is completely based on Tolkapiyam. That's what Adiyark Nallar says in his commentary. Silapadikaram was composed by Ilango. It's a marvel. Unfortunately, it is in Tamil. It's not looked at it from that point of view of dance or drama, but mostly as literary composition. And people fight about it, whether this is a historical one or an historical one. It's a pure and simple dramatic composition by Ilango. And wonderful expression. The way in which the whole thing is arranged, suggested, music and rhythm and dance are all interpolated at important places. It's a marvelous composition. This Silapadikaram has a complete chapter on dance, Arangetram, of a dancing girl, Madhavi. So it is nothing but a full-scale chapter on Nāṭyaśāstra mentioned as Nāṭya in the text itself. So there is no doubt that it is a Nataka Kavya. Remember, Natya and Nataka were all same, almost used as synonyms in ancient times. Also music, Gita, Vadya, and Nritya, Gita, Vadya. Nritya also indicates Nritya and Natya. So Sangeeta in ancient times represented both music and dance, nritta, pure dance, and nritya, evocative dance, and also nataka. Nāṭyaśāstra at the beginning begins with Sringara compositions and vigorous compositions later. They are Sukumara and Avidya. We know Chalapadikaram starts with Sukumara composition, the marriage of Kannaki. It speaks of Ranga Puja. Nāṭyaśāstra speaks of Ranga Puja at the beginning, how to do the puja, invoke the deities for the success of the enactment. So Nāṭyaśāstra speaks of Ranga Puja at the beginning. So also Chilapadikaram describes Ranga Puja at the beginning, the entry of the dance first. Nāṭyaśāstra at the beginning describes Indra Viha, the festival of Indra, in detail. There's a beautiful chapter on Indra Viha, Nāṭyaśāstra. And Chilapadikaram has a chapter on Indra festival at the beginning. Exactly the same. At the beginning you have Indra Viha in Nāṭyaśāstra, at the beginning you have in Chilapadikaram, this Indra Viha. Nāṭyaśāstra has the five-fold divisions of landscape which we have just seen. Hilly region, forest region, cultivable region, coastal region, and desert region. Chilapadikaram is spread on five-fold land divisions. If you take the whole of Chilapadikaram, it keeps on placing one after the other in a progressive way. All the five-fold divisions are covered, and that shows that it has fallen back on the concept of Nāṭyaśāstra. Then again, the author of Chilapadikaram says that he has used Bharati Vritti. The author himself mentions that I have used Bharati Vritti for the first canto of the text, and Arabati and Satvati Vrittis for the second canto. And the third canto deals with Puram, the Puram tradition. What happened? All end up that Sangam poems, Tolkappiyam, Nāṭyaśāstra, and Chilapadikaram, all early group of Tamil expressions, Tamil suggestive mode, 2,500 and more poems, and one of the most beautiful composition and dance tradition, Chilapadikaram, Natyakavya. What a great contribution this area, small area, has given to the world of knowledge and aesthetics. In order to understand that it has its own contribution, we need to know all this. And I am glad that I have been given a chance to represent this to you. Good. There we end up. Thank you, Danino.
Thank you, Dr. Nagaswamy.